Welcome to Recently Logged, where this week we meet someone on Reddit.
Well, we're back again.
Here we are.
Back on the franchise that we've covered over a year. A whole year.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, I think. Arguably my favorite franchise ever, except for maybe Mission Impossible, which we've also covered for a long time.
Mission Impossible has way more misses than this.
That's true. The batting average for Scream movies is pretty insane.
Yeah.
They're almost always a good time.
We're back with Scream 2022. Boo.
I can't believe they made 2,000 Scream movies.
It is
to this point.
It is Scream 5. I cannot believe that the M is sitting there like that, and they couldn't freaking just highlight it and make it Scream 5.
Well, that's the thing. There are certain like official versions of the logo that do have the highlighted V, like the Roman numeral 5. But like the one in the movie doesn't, and like the one on the most posters
which is
don't
why,
have it highlighted.
Which is why this is certifiably the second worst Scream movie.
I think I mentioned it last time we did a Scream episode, that like Scream 4 is sandwiched between the two worst Scream movies, and I'll stand by that.
Yeah. But yeah, we're back. It's spooky season.
It's still spooky season.
We're feeling Halloweeny. I think it's 2 weeks away now.
I'm not keeping track at all.
I'm keeping track. I'm counting down the days to Halloween.
I should be counting down the days.
I'm working on a Stu Mocker costume.
Troublesome.
Nah. He's the best.
He is the best.
And we're back, like always, talking about spooky movies, continuing our series, as I said.
Yeah, we've heavily mentioned it up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's Scream, and I'm so happy to be talking about a Scream movie. It's always fun.
It's always a good time.
Any
dude.
Scream movie, even 3, even 3.
3 is insane.
Bad. But anyway, do we want to get into what they need to know?
Yeah.
Alright, so again, we're talking about Scream.
Scream.
Have we said that before? Have we talked about that? It's 2022.
Came out in 2022.
Rated R. It's an hour and 54 minutes. Its little IMDb description is 25 years after a streak of brutal murders shocked the quiet town of Woodsboro, California. A new killer dons the Ghostface mask and begins targeting a group of teenagers to resurrect secrets from the town's deadly past.
I feel like you can describe just like every Scream sequel except for 2 about that. This is the same way.
Yeah, change the time a little bit, and that's just every Scream movie. I can't speak right now. Why am I recording a podcast? The cast features Neve Campbell, of course. Courteney Cox, of course. David Arquette, of course.
Of course.
Melissa Barrera, Jack Quaid, Mikey Madison, Jenna Ortega, Dylan Minetti, I would say, probably. Jasmine Brown, Mason Gooding, and more.
What a great cast, dude. I say what you will about Scream 5. Love the ensemble here.
It is directed by Matt Bettinelli Olpin, I would say.
Yes.
Probably. And Tyler Gillette, or maybe Gillette. Who can say? We don't really know. It could be either. Written by James Vanderbilt, Guy Busick, and based on characters created by Kevin Williamson.
Indeed.
Isn't that so nice?
Yeah, I think Kevin Williamson has an executive producer credit on this thing.
It would shock me if he didn't.
Yeah, right.
It's his thing.
Yeah.
Executive producer Kevin Williamson.
Cool.
Who knew? Also executive producer Marianne Madeline.
Yeah.
Or Madalena, if I can read. Which isn't of particular note. She
right?
Executive produced, I think, all of them, almost. But that's my sister's name.
It is
spelled
cool.
the same way.
If you remember from our Igor episode, I feel like every time we bring her up on the podcast, we're like, do you remember the Igor episode?
Cinematographer is Brett Jutkowicz, maybe? I don't know. Go check yourself. But he did the cinematography for Scream 6, Ready or Not, Daddy Longlegs, The Black Phone. So yeah, that's interesting.
Checks out.
Well, I know you specifically mentioned while we were watching it that a shot looked like Ready or Not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just figured that was kind of, partially because it's the same directors and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that it's the same cinematographer is funny.
And it is edited by Michael Aller.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Anything else you want to mention, Robbie? You're not mentioning much.
I don't know. What is there to mention? I mean, it's Scream 5, Like, we got the directors, we got the new cast. It's cool.
Brian Tyler did the score.
Oh, that's true, yeah. I don't know, the score for this one is a little... I don't know, the score for any of the Scream movies is kind of, like, minimal. Like, it's usually just kind of, like, aggressive strings, and that's about it.
Yeah, the score isn't something that I would particularly note in any Scream movie, but still,
it's
I like to shout out the composer.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really all I have. It didn't win any awards. I can't think of any specific history moments that are that interesting around it.
I mean, it's worth noting that this is like quite a while after Scream 4 came out.
Yeah, which we talked about in our last episode, that it was 11 years.
Yeah, it would be 11.
11 years after Scream 4, which is pretty crazy. Again, sad that we didn't get Scream 5 as like the sequel to Scream 4 like we talked about in the last episode.
Right.
But very interesting to come back in the year of our Lord 2022.
It seems so surreal because I didn't like know Scream back when it came out, Like that, it seems weird to me.
I knew Scream. I don't know. You seem very like blind to anything you didn't watch.
I am, Micah. That's what you must know. But yeah, like it seems so weird that it came out like last year and I didn't realize, like back when it came out. And now I'm like such a big Scream guy. I'm like, what? How is it 2022? That's crazy.
Well, hey, Robbie, Scream 6 came out this year.
Scream 6. Oh, I love Scream 6.
Crazy stuff. We're moving towards a recent release.
That's crazy, man.
But yeah, that's all you guys need to know. Let's get into what we think about the movie.
Yeah.
So, Robbie, what are if you could sum it up in not so many words, basic thoughts on Scream 5?
Well, I claimed it in, like, I guess the last review I wrote, like the last real review, that it was the worst Scream movie, and I would probably still stand by that. I don't know. It has a lot of, like, really fun ideas, but doesn't really expound upon them that well, like, in my eyes. But it's still really fun. Like, I think it has a nice, strong direction. It has a really fun cast. And I don't know, it's just generally a good time. So I'm never like that upset about it not really delivering on a lot of the things it like brings up. It's essentially like the Force Awakens of the Scream franchise. Like it's kind of just basically rehashing the first one without really justifying its existence. Really, it's just a weaker version of 4. Like 4 does a lot better job of delivering on like the idea of a Scream reboot with like a new cast while still like, being about the original characters in a fun way. Yeah. So yeah, I just think this is probably conceptually the weakest one just because it doesn't really have anything new to say, but it's also like pretty fun. So I can't be too upset about it. But I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 this time. I keep going back and forward between a 3 or a 4. So, but yeah, I gave it a 4. I had a good time on this watch. So, what about you, Micah? What do you think of Scream 5?
Yeah, I think Scream 5 is really interesting because on like some regards, it's a pretty decent movie. I think its cast is really fantastic and they work really well together. I like most of the new characters. I think the kills are fun.
Yeah.
I think the mystery is relatively fun. I think the Ghostface killers are some of the best we've had in the series.
Right.
But, like, the movie itself is just like lacking in so many ways. Like you said, it has a lot of things that it kind of seems to under-deliver on.
Mm-hmm.
I think it as like you said, a conceptual Scream movie kind of doesn't work very well. Its whole like mixed thing with fandom and elevated horror and like all of the different weird stuff it's trying to say gets kind of muddled around, which is not good for a Scream movie. And also, it's just like one of my least favorite looking and feeling of the movies to be in.
That's fair. It's not really like imitating an aesthetic like something like Scream 4 is, because there's not really like slashers were kind of dead at the point when, and actually I guess horror in general was kind of dead in 2022. Like, you know, when this would have been like written and in production, we've kind of had a bit of a resurgence in the 2020s, but like when they were making this movie, it wasn't really around yet, you know? Like stuff like The Babadook and Get Out were like, you know, really big, and that doesn't really relate to Scream really well.
Also, just throwing this out there, I hate that she calls The Babadook elevated horror.
It's elevated horror.
That is not. Even I don't even like elevated horror as a concept. That's dumb.
It's a very funny
horror.
term. Yeah.
But The Babadook is the dumbest movie to ever release. So do not be like, it's complex, it's emotional. No. I wanted to punch that kid in the face. The Babadook sucks.
I was about to say, I like The Babadook for very different reasons than Jenna Ortega's character in this.
But yeah, there are like 9 or 10 lines that make me actively want to die in the movie. But outside of that, it's fun.
Yeah.
I gave it a 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah, if I was handing out half stars, it would be like just a completely solid 3.5. And I mentioned that these guys directed Ready or Not as well, and I would say the same exact thing about that movie.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, I don't know. 6 was pretty good. 6 was a little bit better than
That's
this.
true. That's
so
true.
I was about to say maybe they just make 3.5 movies, but
well, an interesting thing like about Scream 6 is I think it handles its ensemble a lot better than this one does.
It does,
and it's mostly like the same cast. But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I guess they had a lot of groundwork to do, or they felt they had a lot of groundwork to do when it came to like setting up all these new characters and like the new like mythos of these like Scream movies, you know.
One of the interesting things I could note that I just thought of going right into it, if we will get into our main discussion, is like the lack, like speaking of the ensemble, the lack of like deaths in this one. I don't know if it's just because they were trying to set up a new ensemble and couldn't kill off too many of the characters that they wanted to use. But like,
yeah, the fact that both the twins survive.
Yeah, they successfully, like the Ghostface killers, they kill what? 1, 2, 3 people? Do they kill anyone else? Well, like maybe a couple guards here and there.
Yeah, maybe.
But like
it's not a lot.
They kill Wes and his mom.
Yeah.
They kill
the red-haired girl.
I forgot about that. Yeah. I guess in the finale they kill more, but they kill like very few people in the film.
Yeah, and no, I think this might be the lowest body count of any Scream movie, maybe.
Yeah, and it feels that way, I think, because they were trying to get like a fresh ensemble and they wanted it to carry through to the next movie, so they couldn't kill a lot of their characters.
Yeah, no, it's funny, like you can kind of, I don't know, watching it again, you can kind of like feel out who's gonna die pretty well, because they just are like glossed over pretty fast.
Right.
But yeah, especially the one red-haired girl. I can't remember her name.
Neither can I.
But like she's barely in the movie too.
No, she really is. She's there for the opening conversation. She's there to have like a little suspicion.
Yeah, she's there as a red herring, Micah.
But like barely. You know it's not her.
Yeah, right.
It's Liv.
Liv, okay. I thought it was gonna be like Amber or something, like like something really on the nose, but okay, that's fair then.
But yeah, did you have any other question to get us open? I just thought that was of note because I think out of any of the Scream movies, with what they're doing with their ensemble. There are very few deaths in this,
Mm-hmm.
which actually, before we went into that, because I just thought of this, because I mentioned the ensemble in 4, and that we had a little bit of an issue with like the newer ensemble because they weren't focused on as much because they were killed off so fast.
Right.
So maybe we're just like we can't be
Impossible to
appeased.
please.
But I don't know, maybe there's like a nice balance between this of like having a really set up ensemble but still just having like more actual Ghostface killings on screen.
Well, the thing is, I would argue, like, Kevin Williamson is a smart enough character writer that I just care a lot more about the 4 ensemble, like, right away.
Yeah.
Like, they're characterized very quickly, but, like, I'm on board for it very quickly.
Exactly. You kind of know what they're about, whereas this one, you don't really know what they're about fully.
It's kind of weird. Like, there's something definitely very distinctly different about the characters in Scream 5 than like any other
It's got the
Scream
lack
movie.
of Kevin Williamson.
That's true.
Straight up. I mean, he writes dialogue and characters in a very particular way. We mentioned that before. But yeah, do you have a question to kick us off a bit further into our discussion?
Yeah, you mentioned that you don't really like the visual style of this one, and I think it's generally a pretty good-looking movie. I was just wondering if, like...
I don't know.
There's a lot of, like, muddy, medium close-ups for most of this.
There's a lot of the cinematography I'm not a big fan of, and honestly, just a lot of, like... I know you said you liked it. I don't like the color palette and the lighting choices.
Yeah, no, I like the color of this movie.
It looks like a bad HBO show. Like that's like good enough that it's got like decent colors, decent lighting. It's no Netflix show.
No.
But it's like a kind of an ugly HBO show. It looks like TV to me.
You know, having seen like I think VH1 picked up the final scene of the Scream TV show, and they do look kind of similar. Like season 3 or 4, I don't remember which one of the like MTV Scream show does look very similar.
Like
to
the
this.
backgrounds are always muddled,
yeah,
like because of the focus that they use, and like it's almost all these weird close-ups without much care.
Yeah,
and there are some really weird camera angles at parts. There's this reverse shot at one point between Sam and Richie, and it's just so ugly.
Yeah,
I hated it. I looked at that, I was like, this is ugly.
Yeah, beyond some, like, there's an occasional, like, really fun, like, flourish shot, like, obviously very showy, like, Dutch angle or fun zoom or tilt or something. And you're like, oh, that's awesome. But, like, a majority of the movie is just in, like, pretty standard coverage, medium close-ups.
Yeah.
And it muddies the geography in a lot of the, like, just straight up talking scenes.
Well, like I said,
it's
too,
weird.
there's, I feel like I had mentioned this before, either in person or something, or on the podcast. I thought I mentioned it on the podcast at one point, but I don't know why. I think it's really telling, very, very telling, that you can't notice that you're in Stu's house until they reveal it. Whereas in the first movie, Stu's house is like such a location. You know every inch of it in the first movie. But of course, that movie is shot like nobody's business, the original Scream. But like literally, they're like, you're in Stu's house.
Right.
And I'm like, really?
And then they like cut to wide and you're like, what?
I was like, I know what Stu's house looks like. They just don't show it at all with what they're doing in their camera movements. And I think that's pretty telling of the geography of the different locations that you can't. Like, I feel like one of the key elements that makes Ghostface work as a character is kind of goofy set pieces running about geography you can tell, whereas this doesn't really have much of that.
No. And again, I think the final party actually is a pretty good set piece.
Yeah, the final party
when it finally like lets loose and gets going a bit.
No,
but like
in terms of set pieces, and I was going to mention this, I think the first scene is shot like impeccably well.
It is really
the first
fun,
scene in general is really great, and I think the part like it's not like bad cinematography. This is not actively like bad work. It's just work that's like kind of ugly to me personally.
I think it could be a bit better, at least. I don't know.
Yeah, like it's very competent filmmaking.
Yeah.
It's not like you can't not see what's happening, and like there certainly are colors. So I'm not like, it's not bad.
Yeah.
Though that's another line that I think is one of the lines that I hate from this movie, where they're talking about the original Stab
The
film.
first Stab movie.
And Jenna Ortega's character is like, oh, that's so 90s, back when they used to overlight everything, which makes me want to murder somebody.
Wow.
Because one of my biggest complaints of modern movies is that nobody freaking lights anything. Everything is underlit now. So don't talk about the 90s movies like that, when 90s movies generally are extremely well lit.
Yeah, it's funny, like especially during like some of the daytime like outdoor scenes, this movie is not like super well lit. It's a lot of like diffused light, which is pretty common nowadays. You do get an occasional like good strong key light for like the outline of someone's face, but like I don't know, it's pretty basic.
Yeah.
And it kind of that line is funny.
You want to talk about
movie.
Scream? Scream looks incredible in terms of lighting.
Man.
So shut up, Jenna Ortega, you suck in this movie.
Wow.
Or at least, well, see, that's the thing. Like Tara, I don't like Tara in this movie, and I like Tara in 6.
Yeah, when I found out that like all these characters were gonna be back in 6, like I don't know why that didn't occur to me before, but like when I found out they were all gonna be back, I was like, oh, we get another movie with Tara. Like, she's just not given enough for me to really like care about her in this movie.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I disagree with most of what she says about movies, so I find her annoying in that regard.
Yeah, and like that's the most time we spend with her.
She, outside of that, she's like getting rightfully upset with Sam,
right?
And like trying not to die. And I like Jenna Ortega as an actress,
right?
And I think Tara is a really fun character in 6. I just like in this movie, I'm like, whatever, man, shut up.
Micah, you beefing with a fictional child, right?
Beefing with a fictional child over their movie opinions.
Amazing.
Yeah, I don't know. Just in general, this is what I would call one of the weakest. Like 6, even, which is by more or less the same team, feels like it has a very distinct visual voice among the Scream series.
Yeah, and I think since it's not trying to like shoehorn its way into Scream, like the first Scream movie, it can and it's in a new location. They have like now a well-established cast of characters. They can kind of just do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And I feel like I don't know, the impression I get watching this one is that they were very conscious like every step of like not to step on anyone's toes of like Scream fans, which is very funny.
Yeah, it's very funny because like in terms of fandom, which is something we'll talk about later, since that's something this movie is kind of meditating on.
Yeah.
The Scream fandom is like the least caring, I think, in terms of like it's no Star Wars. You're not gonna make a movie and people like pull out the Scream movies are kind of dumb, and their continuity between them isn't that strong.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't think you were going to upset anyone if you made your Scream reboot a little too drastically different.
Yeah, dude. Like, honestly, I think, me personally, what I look for in a Scream movie is just like a smart screenplay and a Ghostface doing stuff.
Right.
That's pretty much all I'm hoping for.
A cool mystery with a cool ensemble and a cool place.
Yeah.
With Ghostface doing stuff.
Exactly.
That's all a Scream movie is.
You can set it wherever you want. You can have the legacy characters do whatever you want.
We could have no legacy characters.
Exactly.
We'll bring that up now.
Why not?
The legacy characters in this, they're not handled very well, and it makes me sad.
Again, going directly from 4 to 5, 4 just does such a better job at actually making the movie like about Sidney and Dewey and everything. Like they actually have like arcs and like stuff to do in those movies.
Like in 4, they do this really interesting thing where it's very much like a pass the torch kind of arc. Like, yes, Gale, Dewey, Sidney, they're all there again, and they're all prominently featured in 4.
No, they're practically like A plot, B plot kind of thing.
But they're put kind of as like, these are like the older characters, and they're like moving on. Yeah. Whereas these new characters, this new ensemble, are going to be our new main characters. Like, they do a really good job of balancing that. Whereas this movie very much feels like, here is our characters, but then we're going to add in this one, and then we're going to add in these two, and then they're going to have a lot of control on the plot towards the end, which is just really weird. Like, they come in late. Like, I don't have any problem with Dewey. I think Dewey's inclusion and death is, like, really, really good.
Yeah, I think it's honestly like best case scenario, since he didn't die in like 4.
Yeah,
You know?
like I think it's a great death for him. I think it genuinely is used well for the effect that they joke about in the movie, for that it makes the movie feel a bit more serious. Because Dewey is a character you really care about.
Yeah.
By the way, that makes my death count before the finale 4. I forgot to include Dewey.
Ah, yes.
But, like, I think Dewey's death and inclusion in the entire thing works really well. Heck, I even like his little... I don't love that they have that Gale and Dewey break up. I think that's annoying. But at the same time, like, for his death, I think it works.
Yeah,
but,
I
like,
almost wish Gale just wasn't in the movie.
I was about to say,
all.
but it doesn't work as well once Gale and Sidney show up.
Well, the thing is, I don't know, Gale's such a, like, an odd inclusion in this one, because, like, she comes in for maybe, like, 2 scenes and then Dewey dies.
Yeah, so then she
right
had,
away.
like...
So she has, like, nothing to do besides, like, make snide remarks to the new cast, you
right,
know?
and Gale and Sidney are literally only there, like, they just have such little motivation, like... In technical universe, their
like,
motivation
in theory, it
makes sense. Because, you killed Dewey. Again, Sidney has kids. How is she gonna... If they killed Dewey, how is she gonna be okay?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Like, it totally makes sense from a, like, person standpoint. But in the movie, it feels so unnecessary for them to be here.
Yeah.
They're just, like... They come in, and then they end up... Like, they don't technically kill Amber... But at the same time, like, they practically do. Like, they then become, like, really strong forces of the plot in the movie, even though Sidney doesn't even appear until, like, I think over the halfway point through the movie. Like, and they're just kind of here. I can't imagine, like, if you had never watched any other Scream movie, this was your first Scream movie.
Oh, gosh.
And then you'd be like, what? Why are these 2 people coming in and, like... steamrolling the ending? I understand that their friend died, but, like, it's just weird that they weren't included more earlier.
Yeah, no, their inclusion is, like, I don't know, like, very strange, and they're also there to kind of, like, recite more, like, meta rule stuff, which we already had a designated character for.
Not only that, but we had Dewey, like, kind of reminding you of, like, the older rules, like the whole you've got to shoot him in the head and stuff.
I swear, it feels like half of, like, Gale and Sidney's lines in this are just like, oh, don't you know the killer is always someone you know, that sort of thing.
Well,
like, they just,
beyond that, like, so half
of
their lines are you gotta shoot him in the head. The killer is someone you
just
know.
Like reciting
the
stuff from
group.
earlier movies.
And then the other half of their lines are like, new girl. Yeah, these crazy kids, they don't know what it's like, but we do.
Yeah.
Which isn't, like, very compelling to include characters. Like, that very much distance Sidney and Gale from, like, having any heart-to-heart with these characters. I don't know if they tried to, like, talk to Sam, and Sam wasn't interested, which I get, because, like, they're 2 weird adults who showed up midway through your movie and want to murder somebody.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't know. It's just weird. They're not used very well.
The thing is, again, 4 does this a lot better, where, like, you know, Gale and Sidney have a very well-defined reason to be in Woodsboro and, like, try and find the killer. Like, they have a very well-defined relation to the new cast.
Yeah.
And a reason to be there. Like, you understand immediately why they're there and why they would stay there. You know?
And I love Sidney's role in 4.
Oh, she's great
over Jill before she's, like, revealed to be Ghostface.
Yeah.
Because, like, you're like, yeah, somebody's now coming for Jill, and Sidney isn't that included, but she's, like, trying to genuinely comfort her and be like, I'm sorry you've gotten pulled into it. It makes an interesting character conflict between Sidney and Jill, because their relationship, as set up previously in the movie, was already, like, weird and rocky with Sidney being Sidney. So, like, they are, from the very beginning, they had Jill reference Sidney and how weird it was going to be be around her and everything. So they set that up right at the beginning for their characters to make the relationship between the 2 of them really interesting. Yeah. And kind of have Sidney be this almost mother figure for Jill.
Yeah. Like I said, this is pretty much just like a bad version of 4. But yeah, no, all of the legacy stuff is very strange, especially since they choose to acknowledge it so directly and yet seem to have no, like, they just like point at it. They're like, oh, we're doing that. And then there's no angle to
That's
it.
a lot of this movie, though, and I think they didn't fully, I don't know, understand how to write it or think through it that well. Because a lot of this movie is that, you know, like
They'll do a trope and then they'll be like, look, we're doing the trope.
Yeah, or even like again, like the whole stab 8. Who are you kidding? Just like why call it stab? Just call it stab 8. Like, yeah. Why didn't you call this Scream 5? Like you can make fun of the fact that you didn't call it Scream 5, but that still leaves the question of the audience, why not call it Scream 5? You literally did the thing that everybody hated in your movie.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like, the original Scream is also loaded with tropes, and that's the whole premise of Scream, the first one.
Yeah, I was about to say, we've talked about it before with Scream. We bring it up with most movies, like with most Scream movies that we talk about. Like, kind of the base concept for a Scream movie is that it's like riffing on or making fun of or trying to bring back certain tropes of horror.
Exactly. And well, what makes the first Scream so like fun and like powerful to watch is that they are doing all of these like kind of tired tropes, but like getting back to like the bare like basics of those tropes to begin with and making them like good, you know?
Also having like it's good writing paired with the fact that the characters are really like it's very fun and fresh in the first Scream movie with the way they reference it and how they interact and engage with the text. It feels unique, it feels exciting. Whereas this one, they're just, like, the characters don't really engage with the text, is the thing.
Yeah.
Like, the text is there, and they mention it sometimes, but, like, it doesn't tangentially tie into any of their characters or, like, their arcs or their deaths. There's only one character who really cares about movies, and that's only ever really brought up when she's like just explaining the new rules.
Yeah.
Which is done again way worse than 4. Like she's just like, here are the rules. Even though they don't have as much of like a setup or reason for that. And then like it's used for like a relatively funny joke for the parallel of Randy, like she's watching Stab.
Yeah, again, that's like a fun moment, but it doesn't really mean anything.
Again,
you know?
It's so weird too that they're related to Randy. Like, why?
I was harping on like the clear ties to the past cast. That's not what I meant.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a difference between like Jill and Sidney being directly related and then having all of Jill's friends not really be related to anyone. And then having like Sam is related to Billy. The twins are related to what did I just
Randy.
Randy.
Yeah.
Like all of the characters who live, even Wes, who doesn't live, was related to Judy. So like all of the characters are directly related to people previously.
But not in a meaningful like character way.
They're just like
it's literally just blood relation.
Like, and it's so weird too. Like why do they have a giant memorial of Randy's face in their house? That's weird.
It's the Uncle Randy home theater, Micah.
I know it's the Uncle Randy home theater, but they have like all the Stab movies there. They have Randy's face big on the wall, and they're playing on their TV like a waiting screen for Stab, the true story, and like Billy's faces. It's just the weirdest thing. No person would have that in their house if their uncle was killed by a serial killer. You don't slap their giant picture on your wall and play movies based on their death.
One thing that Taylor J. Williams brought up in his review was like the very strange inclusion of Billy in this, like all the way down to like getting Skeet Ulrich back.
Yeah,
it's very weird. It feels almost like it almost feels like it should be poking fun at something, but at the same time, it doesn't really.
Yeah, if we're
feel that way.
If we're touching Sam's character, which we haven't gotten to yet, there's a lot we can talk about with Sam's character, but she's really, really weird. One thing that's interesting and of note about the Scream series as a horror series is it never really brought in the whole, oh, they're just mentally ill, so that's why they're doing this. But yeah, this has a really big thing, and maybe they were trying to touch on, but that wasn't even like a big trope of like modern. That's not a big trope of it. It still is a trope in modern horror.
Yeah, it is.
But it's not as big as it was in like the 2010s or the
No.
2000s. You couldn't avoid that in those periods. But now we have a character. Like I was about to say, maybe this is supposed to be making fun of the whole is the person with the mental illness the killer.
Maybe.
But at the same time, like they play into it.
Yeah, I don't.
They have like Sam constantly seeing Billy and Billy constantly telling her to murder people.
Yeah.
And then at the end, she's like, I'm a serial killer's daughter, and stabs Richie like 45 times.
Yeah.
Like, that's not good. And I know, like, Robbie was talking about that, like, some people are advocating for Sam to be a killer in Scream 7, and that's just really kind of offensive for how her character is portrayed.
Yeah.
I would hate that. Like, please don't do that.
Yeah, Sam's character in general, both in this movie and in 6, I don't know, I have a hard time, like, getting 100% on board with, like, her whole emotional arc.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I've always had a really, like, Sam's a really weird protagonist, both in
Right?
5 and 6. And I like her, especially in 6. I like her
yeah,
more.
she's a bunch of fun at 6, dude.
But especially in this one, like, they just go about writing her so strangely. Like, I
Well,
don't even know how to describe it.
The thing is, all of her scenes are very, very serious, or they're meant to
Yeah.
be very, very serious. Like, they're framed in a more dramatic light.
Yeah,
pretty
she's
much
just
all the time.
the character. Like the movie takes her character so seriously
Mm-hmm.
when it doesn't take anybody else this seriously.
I was about to say, like, almost all of the, like, side cast is just, like, cracking jokes the whole time, and Sam is, like...
Every scene she's in,
Yeah.
she's making like a depressed face or crying or seeing visions or like something is bad is happening to
Yeah,
someone.
it makes, I don't know, I always struggle. That's honestly one of my biggest critiques of Scream 5. Like, when I'm watching it, I have such a hard time getting behind any of the more serious emotional beats of the movie. Like, even between Sam and Tara, and, like, you know, Dewey and Gale. Like, I just have a really tough time being like, yeah, okay.
Well, there's like one scene
know.
given to each of those.
Yeah.
Like the confrontation between Tara and Sam.
I just don't care that much.
Never really brought up again.
Yeah.
Like, she like goes through this really emotional reason for why she left when they were kids, and like the big reveal that her dad was Billy,
Mm-hmm.
and then like the next time they interact, or rather that Sam interacts, because Tara isn't even there because she's just in the hospital for most of the movie.
Yeah.
She's just telling everybody. She's like, "Hi, my dad's Billy. Nice to meet you."
Right.
So it's like, Sam in general is just written really weirdly in this movie. There's not much for you to like attach onto for her character, unless like you kind of care because you're like, oh, she's sad. I don't want her to be sad.
Right.
But she's just sad the whole movie.
Well, the thing is, like, I want to care more about, like, her reuniting with her sister and, like, finally facing her past. But, like, I don't know, the characterization of it, and it moves through that first act so quickly that I don't really end up caring as much as I think I need to for the movie to work.
Yeah, and then they pull out that thing in the finale of like, I even got you to doubt that it was like your sister or
Oh,
something.
such a dumb beat.
Which
dude.
is such a dumb beat because like that would be a really dumb thing for Sam to think. Like, she doesn't actually think that. Like, it's just this weird thing between Sam and
really
Tara,
weird plot point.
because like their characters
doesn't
are
feel like a
so
good payoff or
underdeveloped.
anything,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you're like, I even got you blah 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 blah. But like in every interaction we've seen with Sam, she's been like unequivocally like desperately trying to get back in the good
Right.
graces of her sister.
No, whenever she's like, oh, you really think I would think that about my own sister? It's like, of course you wouldn't, you know?
Yeah, like
There was never any doubt, and it just feels like a really silly, like, beat.
Like, it would actually be, I don't think it would have been, like, smart, but it would have been really crazy if they had pulled off Amber and Tara being the killers.
That would be crazy.
That would be,
dude.
like, a wild twist.
Yeah.
But, like, they don't do that, so...
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I feel like this movie at its core does very much have the Force Awakens energy. Like that's a really I when I heard someone mention that, I was like, that's a really good way to put it.
But I also don't like bringing that up because I feel like that then justifies what it's trying to say about fandom and Rian Johnson.
Well, I also think the Force Awakens has a lot of problems.
Well, I know, but I'm saying by directly comparing it to
yeah.
Star Wars when I feel like it's such a not anywhere near similar in its terms of its like cultural and fandom participation thing. And then they have the whole, it's so, why is this movie pulled in 45 different directions? I know we're supposed to be talking about like we both said we liked this movie. And I really do.
I give it a 4
I
out of
really
5.
enjoy this movie.
I think it's pretty great.
Very fun to watch.
Yeah.
Even the worst Scream movie which is 3, is fun to watch.
Dude, 3 is a blast.
So like, it's not that this is like not fun to watch, but it's just so weird and muddled at parts. And this thing is pulled in like 45 different directions. Think about the themes. What is the takeaway of this movie?
Don't mess with the original ? ITK.
Yeah, like there's no real character lesson learned. Like, don't mess with a serial killer's daughter. Don't mess with the original. And then like they throw in stuff with like the sister dynamic. They throw a bunch of themes at the wall, but none of them really have anything to do with each other. And I think the biggest like example of that is the weird fandom stuff. I wanted to bring that up with like Richie's
the
character.
Motivation for the killers in this one.
The motivation for the killer in this movie is that Rian Johnson directed Stab 8.
Stab 8, baby.
And everybody hated it in the fandom. It wasn't anything like the others, and it's trying to be too serious or something, even though it looks really weird. I don't know. Anyway, they directly tie it clearly.
Maybe it was I think he directed Stab 5 in the universe, right?
No, he directed Stab 8, the one that everyone hates.
Oh, well, maybe I'm misremembering. It's not important.
I'm pretty darn sure, because that's the whole thing, is they tie the clearest ties to The Last Jedi that they could.
Yeah.
That they're trying to be like, man, the Star Wars fandom is bad. That's really bad, the way they reacted to The Last Jedi. But like, what else is it saying about movies? What else is it saying about Scream? What does that have to do with Scream?
Right.
It's just like, Richie's like, how can fandom be toxic? It's about loving things. And you can watch that and be like, yeah, that's kind of funny because he's toxic.
Whoa, that's so like, crazy.
The Scream fan base isn't known for being toxic. So like, what are you talking about? What does this have to... In fact, horror in general is genuinely... usually like the most chill fan base.
Well, and the thing is, like, in previous Scream movies, you get like poking fun at how obsessive horror fans can be, and like that's generally the premise of like a lot of the sequels.
Horror
but
fans
like
are
not
silly
specific,
and
like trying to pin that specifically to Scream fans just feels very disingenuous, you know?
Well, and that's beyond like obsessiveness. Like I would say, like, heck, we're even a little over obsessive about the Scream movies. It's really easy to do with the Scream movies.
Yeah,
but this doesn't have anything to do with obsessiveness. This is specifically about that weird like thing,
possessiveness,
that possessive fandom where they think, like, again, that whole like it's tied to a strong thing in my childhood, so now I fervently will defend it to a unhealthy amount, and will be really weird about any changes. Like a clear parallel to some real thing, like awful thing that happened. The Star Wars fandom is terrible, and what happened with The Last Jedi, whatever you think about The Last Jedi, is terrible. Like, people were genuinely awful towards that movie, and the people who made it, and the people who were in it, like
the people who like it,
and the people who like it, like, it's just terrible.
And the people who dislike
the Star Wars fan base does not know how to behave at all. But like, that doesn't have anything to do with like horror. Like, I can't think of any parallels that has to like a horror, like a recent horror fandom thing.
Well, they mentioned stuff like, you know, Child's Play, like a lot of the like weird 2010s reboots that a lot of people didn't like, but there wasn't like a cultural outrage like, about them, you know?
That was the thing. That's the thing with horror fans. If there's a bad horror movie or a bad remake, you're like, oh, yeah. Like,
I'll get it next time.
I have not seen, because horror franchises are built on the fact that like most like half of them are rough.
Yeah.
Like again, like Friday the 13th. Most people think the first one sucks.
Yeah.
So like it's not about this like, oh, every previous movie is perfect, so every new movie has to live up to those perfect expectations. That's not a thought, in my opinion, that comes with the horror theories. The part of
I'm sure
part of,
people do think that,
part
but
of
it's a
loving-
weird thing to try and like generalize.
Yeah, I was about to say, part of what I have seen of loving horror franchises, part of loving horror in general,
Yeah.
is accepting the bad that comes with horror. How stupidly written most of them are, and like cheesy, and how many not great entries there are. And
Yeah.
it's looking at all of that and accepting like, yeah, but like here are the fun things, and we can appreciate these movies for the fun stuff that is in them.
Exactly.
And yeah, people may treat them obsessively and weird, but like there's not a problem in the fan base that I have ever experienced of people like getting upset when a bad movie in a franchise comes out from a horror franchise, because that's like, yeah, people, again, same thing with like Halloween, the quote unquote requels from Halloween. Not everybody loved those.
No.
But you don't still see people up in arms about it,
Right.
They-
I don't
they were
hear
like-
anyone,
they were
even
like, oh, I
hardcore
didn't-
Halloween
yeah,
fans
they were like,
complain
oh,
about
I didn't
them.
really like the new Halloween movies.
And then they move on.
And then they move on because there's a billion Halloween movies people don't like.
Yeah.
Already. It just slots right in with Halloween H2O.
Oh, goodness.
Like, you know, it's just not a thing. So it feels really, really weird for Scream 5 to be so focused on that.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of just like weird, like they try and generally touch on like requels and slashers and like weird legacy stuff. I don't know. It tries to do a lot and doesn't really have like anything of substance to actually
Yeah.
say about Scream or like the modern state of horror.
Yeah, it's throwing so much at the wall about so many different things, but
Yeah.
never really, again, yeah, exactly, about Scream or modern horror.
Yeah.
Like the closest thing that they try to do with modern horror is reference, again, the stupid...
It's all lip
that's
service.
elevated horror.
Yeah, it's all
but they
just
don't-
lip
they
service.
don't have
It doesn't
anything to
really
say
matter.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, in fact, I think it actually is kind of a bad thing, like a bad writing thing that happens in the movie, where you can point at the fact that when somebody, like when Ghostface asks what elevated horror is, Tara's like, oh, it's like horror, but with like complex emotions and like worked in.
Yeah.
But then, literally directly in what they're describing Stab 8 is like, they said it tried to work in complex emotion. So are they claiming like that like new horror movie remake things are trying to make them like Jordan Peele movies?
Which, like, I don't know.
I haven't seen
in my
that
experience,
happening.
I have not seen, like, I've never seen someone compare the Child's Play remake to like elevated horror.
Yeah, like that it's trying to be
You know?
this big grand thing. Like that, like I thought about like when they mentioned that this last time that we watched it, I was just like, what?
And like it's kind of I think it's kind of like criticizing like the notion of Scream being elevated at all. Like they're saying like Stab is supposed to be like schlocky and like a whodunit, you know?
Yeah.
But like no one was claiming that about Scream to begin with.
Well,
you
I was
know?
about to say what's interesting about that claim too is Scream, the original Scream, is significantly less schlocky than the other horror movies that came out at the time. That was the
Right.
point. It was supposed to be making fun. Like, that was the thing in the original Scream movie, was that it was like poking fun at how schlocky horror movies were at the
Yeah,
time.
they were becoming super outrageous and silly and like forgetting why the tropes that like the genre was built on worked in the first place.
Yeah, even the whole PG-13 sex scene joke that they
Yeah.
make, like that's there because there was so much topless nudity in horror movies at the
Yeah.
time. They were becoming like, again, schlocky, very like of their worst tropes and worst tendencies, and Scream did a really great job of making fun of that. So like it's weird to think that like to come back to and look back at Scream and be like, Scream was supposed to be a schlock fest of silly no plotness.
Yeah, like I said, it's just such a silly notion that doesn't really carry that much weight for me. Like, you know, watching like a Scream, practically a remake, I don't know, it comes off really weird.
Yeah, it's just not like, that's the thing. I honestly, from what we've been pulling, like Scream 5 is just wrong about the rest of the Scream series. And I hate to be like that because that makes me sound like,
Womp womp.
like, oh, Scream 5 just doesn't understand the rest of the series.
Didn't understand this.
Like, exactly what they're making fun of in the movie.
Yeah.
But, like, they genuinely, like, what are they saying? You know? Like, they can make fun of that mindset all you want.
Yeah.
But what is your movie actually doing? Because, like we said, it's throwing a bunch of different things at the wall, and none of them have to do with each other, and none of them have to do with Scream.
Yeah.
And none of them really have to do with the modern landscape of horror, besides, like, again, the very lip-service-y references to Jordan Peele and elevated horror,
Yeah.
and the freaking Babadook.
The Babadook.
So, like, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's a silly little movie.
It's a silly movie, but one I enjoy watching.
Yeah, and I think that's all that I have in terms of criticism for it. I'd love to spend a little bit of time talking about what we actually like about the movie. So do you have like a favorite scene or sequence?
Oh gosh. I don't know. It's probably the party, like the ending set piece with like all the finale for all of its dumbness and like, oh, we met on Reddit, like things that happen. I do think it's really fun. We get like the best stuff from Mikey Madison and Jack Quaid. They're like so much fun.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to mention Mikey Madison and Jack Quaid because I mentioned towards the beginning that I think they're some of the best ghost faces we've had in the series, and I genuinely think they are.
Yeah, they're not the best written, but
not inherently the best written, but not like the worst. Like, I would much rather have these ghost face killers than sixes, than like threes.
Oh, definitely more than Roman.
Twos.
Oh gosh.
Like, as much as I like 2, I think 2's a really solid sequel. I don't love it for its ghost face.
No.
Or at least its ghost face reveal. Like, I think 4's got really solid ghost face.
Yeah.
I think this has really solid ghost face. But like, even if their motivations are like a little silly, it's fleshed out in a way that's not quite as silly as other Scream movies. Like, it doesn't have this wild, I knew Sidney's mom 55 years ago and
so funny,
wrote her a letter, and then Billy was my brother, and we all were mad at things, so we became Ghostface.
Literally the funniest thing about 3 is that they frame Roman as like the overarching villain of the trilogy and then just immediately kill him.
Oh, I hate Roman. He sucks.
It's the funniest thing ever.
I hate it. He ruins, I'll say it
he
every
actively
time.
Ruins
he actively ruins the original movie's premise. But yeah, like, outside of Amber and Richie's motivations being like the weird fandom stuff, like I mentioned, they are just really, really fun.
They're so much fun.
They have such great chemistry, and then they don't have any like weird stuff once they're revealed as the killers. They're not turning on each other. They just exist as fun little ghost faces.
Right.
Their motivations, while they don't tie super well into what we think like modern horror has to say, like, it still is a clear and like palpable motivation. You're like, yeah, okay, that's like a motivation.
Yeah, I'm down for it. They seem unhinged enough that would happen.
Like, it works because like, even if it doesn't have anything to do with horror, that is like making fun of that side of fandom is a thing that we can all appreciate in this day and age because fandom is a nightmare. So like, yeah, I totally am on board for like Richie and Amber's characters. Yeah, and then they're just good. Like, they just are. They have fun. They're cool.
Literally anytime either of them are on screen, I'm like, yeah, this is a good time, dude.
They're both giving great performances. Jack Quaid and Mikey Madison are just really great actors.
They're so much fun, dude.
And they play off of each other super well. Like, they're as much fun, like, not as much fun. They're the most fun that I think any actor has had in the Ghostface role since Billy and Stu. Like,
it's a bold claim, Micah.
They're no Matthew Lillard. Nobody has captured the Matthew Lillard energy since Matthew Lillard has left the series. Tragically. He has a cameo in this one, Micah. He does have a cameo because Matthew Lillard is the best. But like, again, They are some of the most fun. I see, like, I think the Ghostface killer should be fun.
Yeah.
I think they should be, like, having fun.
Right.
Ghostface is a silly concept.
It really is.
The dressing up as Ghostface
High
and
schooler
killing
in a
people
Ghostface
is
costume.
supposed to be very silly.
Yeah.
And not many of, like they got, like, really unsilly for some reason. Even with 4, like, that's one thing you could say is it's not very silly.
I guess. I don't know. It's a little tongue-in-cheek at times, which is good.
Well,
I think 4 handles it pretty
specifically
well.
Jill is just not a very silly character.
Yeah.
She takes herself super seriously. I think Charlie is silly.
Exactly, yeah. You kind of get a good split on
So
the
yeah,
two.
no, I think 4's Ghostfaces are fine. But
Yeah.
even then, like, it shows, like, 3 is definitely not silly.
Oh, gosh.
Like, it's silly, but, like, Roman isn't silly.
Silly in the wrong way, guys.
So, like, I definitely think you should have, like, these really silly, kind of fun, weak motivated killers, because that was the whole appeal of Billy and Stu.
Right, yeah, like
They had no, that was literally, that's why I hate 3, because that was literally part of what made them so fun, is they had no motive.
Yeah.
That's, like, literally their whole shtick. That's what makes them fun.
Yeah.
They're just two fun actors playing off of each other really, really well. Who are just, like, they don't have a motive.
I need to watch Scream again. It's so good.
Scream is, like, the best movie ever. So, yeah. Darn it, I'm talking bad about... Well, no, I'm not. Again, Scream 5 is really fun.
Scream 5 is such a good time.
And I think, yeah.
We've done nothing but complain
like
about it and be like, oh, I missed the first Scream.
Like I was saying,
it sounds so silly.
Richie and Amber are great. That was the moral of the story. They have really fun action scenes. I think most of the killing scenes in this movie are really great. Yeah. Like, I actually wanted to mention, for my question earlier, my favorite scene or sequence, it's not my favorite, but I wanted to shout it out because it's genuinely one that sticks with me, is the whole Wes and his mom's death. I think those are fun.
It's a solid, it's a solid, like, little, like, section of the movie.
I was about to say, if it was just Wes, it wouldn't work well, but the tie, like, from the shower, like, him getting in the shower to the mom driving back and then getting killed on the porch and, like, all that, I think that's super fun.
It's got a good momentum to it.
I think most of the kills in this movie are really, really fun. Heck, I even, like I said, Dewey's death scene, I think that's a really fun kill.
Yeah, it's cool. I think it works well.
Like, when this movie is just being a slasher and not getting caught up in all of its, like, weird stuff, I think it's a really fun movie.
Yeah. No, generally, again, I generally think Scream, like, the remake is pretty great. But, like,
5.
it has so many just, like, weird little dumb things that it latches onto that just drag it down from being anything beyond just, like, fun, you know?
Yeah, and ultimately I think it's a really good kickoff for 6. I think the best thing it gave us is
that really is the best thing about it, is that it gave us a good jumping off
6 is
point.
really good, and I hope 7 will be too.
Yeah.
Because, like, I like
get a 7, dude.
right? I like this cast. Oh man,
I really hope so.
I hope, don't be a Scream 4.
Oh gosh,
don't just, like, set up a trilogy and then kill it. I hope we get 7,
please.
But yeah, like, I think this is really fun. I think it sets up the characters for the future well, even if they're a little muddled here. And at the end of the day, I think it's an enjoyable film to watch.
It really is. I can't be too upset about it.
It's got a fun Ghostface. It's got fun characters. They're doing fun things. They occasionally have funny lines.
Yeah.
They occasionally go to fun locations. And there's occasionally fun deaths.
Yeah.
So, like, and I even like the quote unquote mystery reveals and stuff of who it actually is. I think that's fun. So I think it nails, at some level, a lot of the basics of Scream, and then fails on some of the other basics of Scream.
I think it's worth mentioning, since Letterboxd just put out its, like, most obsessively rewatched horror films, it's worth mentioning that this is, like, number 4 on the list amongst Letterboxd users.
Weird. You know what was number 1 though, Rebby?
Scream.
Scream was number 1.
The OG.
That is the most obsessively watched horror film on Letterboxd. Good. Go watch Scream.
But yeah, I just thought it was a funny thing since that just came out, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, generally, it's a good time. We probably spent way too long talking about it.
For sure. But, you know, I think it's important, like, because I think it's important to talk about, like, what specifically bothers me about Scream 5. Because I think on the whole, it's a good movie.
Yeah.
But it's got so many things that I think are, like, important to point out and not just be like, oh yeah, Scream 5's a weird little movie, because it is, but
is.
like there's a reason for that, and
Yeah.
I think it's because this movie doesn't know like what it wants to say at the end of the day. It doesn't know what it wants to be, and it feels like it's pulled between having to do like its weird own requel rules and be too reverent to the originals.
Yeah, it's like torn between being like a weird satire of like requels or trying to remake Scream, basically.
Yeah, it's just kind of in this limbo, and I think the moment the directors, writers, because practically the whole team worked on 6, were able to move away from Woodsboro and do their own
Thank goodness, dude.
they made a much better movie.
Yeah.
That had a much more clear idea of what it wanted to say.
Dude, I love the set pieces in 6. 6 is a blast.
So yeah, that's Scream 5.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and get into what else we watched.
Yeah, let's do it. Alright, so for those of you who are new to the podcast or have never listened this far, the What We Watch segment is a fun little thing we do at the end, where we talk about all of the movies that we've seen since our last episode. We give brief thoughts, brief ratings, and have lots of fun while doing so.
Wow. Sounds like a great time.
We totally are recording all of these segments at the same time, and you probably won't be able to tell any difference between the liveliness of our voices, I'm sure.
Whenever we record out of sequence, Micah always feels the need to draw attention to it.
Because I can't. I'm thinking of the audience. I'm thinking of the listeners.
You want an honest
who
podcast.
are sitting there and they're listening to us throughout the entire opinion, probably sounding sleepy as heck. And then we come back in and we're like, "Hi, welcome to the What We Watched segment." We're frauds, Robbie. We're frauds.
For recording out of order.
Exactly.
Amazing.
But this week we're starting on the 10th, because that's when our last episode came out, our Hotel Transylvania episode.
The 10th of October.
10th of October, of
in
course.
2023.
In 2023.
Crazy.
And what did we watch, Robbie, on the 10th of October of 2023?
Well, we watched a couple things. But the first thing we watched was Neon Genesis Evangelion, the end of Evangelion.
Crazy. If you listened to our last episode, we had just finished. It was a rewatch for me, first watch for Robbie. 5 days previously, we had finished Evangelion Neon Genesis.
Well, Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Yes. And we had been trying to find a good time to watch the end of Evangelion.
Yes.
And we finally did.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, again, it's a rewatch for me, but I actually bumped it up into my top 4 favorites on Letterboxd right now. It's one of my favorite things ever made.
I mean, I don't understand how you make a movie like this.
It's one of the most beautiful, like beautifully animated, experimental, emotional, crazy, really engaging, really emotionally impactful, really strong messaged, really unique feeling things I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mentioned, I think, on the last episode where I was like, oh, it kind of bums me out that we don't get to, like, see the end of Evangelion, like, when you're watching the show. And the same thing kind of applies here. I'm sad that I don't get to see the end of the show when I watch the end of Evangelion.
I don't know, but I still say, like, a pretty solid argument against that is I really wouldn't honestly want this, like we wouldn't have gotten what we got if it was put together.
Well, no, I know. It obviously wouldn't work the way these.
What we got is pretty perfect.
Yeah, the way these were produced, like that wasn't gonna happen. But like, I don't know. It's a minor thing.
I was about to say you just get caught up on small details like that because it's not an issue for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to watch them. Like neither of them could exist without each other. Essentially, I mean, obviously Neon Genesis did for quite a bit. But, like, it was missing a major piece, and people could tell.
Yeah.
But End of Evangelion, man.
The movie itself is very, very cool. It uses symbolism in a really cool way, like, even more so than the show ever did.
I don't know if that's true.
I would say so. It takes it to a much more extreme level.
Just because there are much more extreme things happening.
And I think it's awesome.
I don't know.
And I love...
It's like you're speaking down on the show, Robbie.
And I love the music a lot in this one. Again, even more so than in the show, which I also think it's good in. But yeah, it's really cool. It's even more ambitious and crazy than the show is, and I think it's beautiful. It's a really beautiful piece of art.
Yeah, I put in my review that like honestly with its messaging and everything, if you're okay with what's in it, I feel like it's a must see for me personally.
Yeah, it just always strikes me about both this and the show how like vulnerable and introspective so much of Evangelion is, you know?
Yeah, and so and the end takeaway is such like a I don't know, an affirming, really
Yeah,
great message in my
exactly.
opinion. So that's cool. I gave it a 5 out of 5, of course.
I was gonna give it a 4 at first. And like the
Boo.
more I sat with it, the more I was like, wow, like
Boo.
that's it's kind of insane that like someone made this and it's like a thing that
This
someone
guy
made.
sucks.
But yeah, no, I gave it a 5 out of 5. Like obviously I after sitting with it for a while, I was like, yeah, man. Like it you couldn't do much better than that.
Yeah, it's like one of the greatest movies ever made, and Robbie's like, "Ooh, maybe a 4."
I don't know, I just needed to sit with it for a second.
Anyway, later that night, we went out to a very, very cool theater, and we watched Eighth Grade in theaters.
Yeah.
Special event screening.
An exclusive Atlanta Film Society screening.
Exclusive Atlanta Film Society donor screening.
Amazing. But yeah, I had never seen Eighth Grade before, so I got to watch it for the first time in a theater.
Yeah, this was a rewatch for me, and I got to show my brother and my girlfriend Eighth Grade in a theater, so that's cool. It's a great movie.
It really is so good.
I was worried I wouldn't love it as much as I did on like a rewatch, but especially seeing it in theaters, it's so cool. It's such a good movie. I can't believe it turned out so good coming from Bo Burnham. Like I said, in interviews and stuff around this, and just the writing in general, I think in this is really thoughtful. And he was really trying to make a really strong, palpable message. And it's just such an empathetic movie that has such a vulnerable, yet again, we just talking about that vulnerable portrayal of like teenhood.
Yeah, no, I do think that's kind of funny that we watched End of Evangelion and then Eighth Grade because they're both very like, like yeah, they're both coming of age projects in their own separate ways.
Yeah.
But very different. But yeah, Eighth Grade, it was really, I don't know, it was really funny. And like you said, like really, a really empathetic look at like modern teenagehood, which is kind of cool. Like it sounds kind of lame when I put it like that. Like I'd automatically assume that it would be kind of like weird and like approach social media and like just modern culture in a really weird way. But this is like, I don't know, it's really thoughtful. And I think Houston described some of its energy as like anti-nostalgia, kind of, which is a really fun way to put it, because the like era it depicts in all of its glory, you know?
Yeah, like specifically, I looked. He quoted it as reverse nostalgia.
Yeah, reverse nostalgia.
Which, yeah, very much like looking at all of this and like all the stuff we kind of grew
the
up with,
Gucci stuff,
and being like, ooh,
yeah,
that was rough, and living through that was rough, and being a teenager is rough.
But yeah, I mentioned that Eighth Grade taps into the ever-present awkward sensation of existing in the world in a really cool way. So, a very admirable film. I would love to see Bo Burnham do something else.
Yeah,
Please.
You could direct another movie, but
Yeah.
I gave it a 5 out of 5.
I also gave it a 5 out of 5, which I really didn't expect, honestly.
Yeah,
It's pretty cool.
because Robbie hates movies.
No.
Then what did you watch, Robbie?
Well, since I hadn't seen like a strictly Halloween movie that day, I wanted to squeeze one in. So I watched Lux Eterna, which is a Gaspar Noé film, and it was weird. Which I feel like you could say that about like all of his stuff. I had seen Vortex previously, and also Circus Maximus, if you want to count that. But it's like about a bunch of people on a film set, and they're like talking about their past roles, and like stuff malfunctions at the end, and I don't know, it's like all a big metaphor for like how the film industry like treats its actresses and everything. And it kind of works, but like, I don't know, I wasn't totally down for what it was doing. It's a very strange film and kind of off-putting at times. Also, it has like epileptic seizure-inducing sequences, which always make me feel like I'm iron deficient and would probably kill me if I was like, epileptic. Which I'm glad they put like a very long warning at the beginning of the film. But it's always interesting whenever I watch something like this. I don't know. Weird movie. I give it a 3 out of 5. I don't have too much to say about it in reality.
On the 11th, I watched at least most of The Boogeyman with my mom. She was watching it. I missed like the first 15 minutes, but I watched enough of it that I wanted to log it. I had seen it before in theaters. It's just a fun little movie. It's not that great, not that notable. Again, if you're talking about movies that came out that year, Smile is practically doing the same thing, and it's just like a little bit more fresh and ingenuitive and fun. So, yeah, The Boogeyman, I give it a 3 out of 5.
Fair enough. Later on the 11th, we watched Carrie in the theater.
Went out to the theater
which was pretty
and
cool.
watched Carrie, the 76 one, the Brian De Palma Carrie, the good Carrie.
I was about to say, not the other Carrie movie.
Though I haven't seen I've seen 2 out of 3 Carrie adaptations. Haven't seen the 2000s one.
Yeah, not. My hopes are not high.
Yeah. But anyway, Brian De Palma's Carrie.
I feel like we just talked about Carrie
because we watched it for the first time like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then a theater near us is doing a whole special Halloween thing every Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And this was one of the ones on there. So it was like $5. And, how are you not going to go watch Carrie in theaters for $5?
Right. I think I said it before, like when I watched it, but the camera movement alone, like just the visuals of this movie could probably carry me through the whole thing.
Right. Watching it in theaters was really awesome. I think on a rewatch, it actually worked a little bit more solidly for me. I loved a lot of the visuals, of course. I really loved the performances a lot. They're really big standouts.
Yeah,
and
man.
Again, it sells me on the Carrie story, which I think is really hard to do. I get emotionally invested both times that I watched it. I wanted it to
very hard to do.
Really invested in the fact that like Carrie was having a good time at the prom and everything. Like
right.
they do such a great job at that, which I think is crazy impressive.
I still think that's one of the coolest things about the whole movie is that the prom just feels like pure magic, like
Right.
it's such a great finale to the film, which the whole film is kind of built around its finale, so it kind of has to work to be like great, which I think it is.
Yeah.
So I gave it a 4 out of 5.
I gave it a 4.5 out of 5.
Very, very good.
On the 12th, I watched Graveyard Rats, which is one of the films from Cabinet of Curiosities, the Guillermo del Toro produced Netflix series.
Yes.
And this is one of the ones that I had not gotten to last year because I had watched probably 4 of the episodes last year.
I think so.
And this was one of the ones that I never made it to that I was interested in. So I finally came back to good old Graveyard Rats. And it's really fun. And there's a cool giant little rat. And all the little rats are cool.
A cool giant little rat.
Yeah. And there's like a cool little guy. And it's fun. And the main performance is fun. It's not my favorite thing in the world. I don't think it's that I don't know. It doesn't sell me on its emotional core. But it's fun. And it's got rats. Rats are cool.
It's got rats.
I give it a 3 out of 5.
Fair enough. Later that day, we watched Dr. Sleep, which it was my first time seeing it.
It's a rewatch for me.
I had just seen The Shining like a couple weeks before for the first time.
Which I had watched The Shining a bit ago as well. And I'd watched Dr. Sleep back when I watched The Shining. And this time we watched the director's cut.
Yeah.
Which is 30 minutes longer actually than the normal cut, and it's structured a little bit differently, so that was interesting.
I thought it was pretty great. I don't know, obviously it's not going to be as good as The Shining, and I don't really think it aspires to do the same thing The Shining does. I think Mike Flanagan is a smart enough writer and director that he wouldn't even attempt to do that.
Right.
And I like it. I think the world that Dr. Sleep exists in is really cool. I really like the cast of it a lot. and it has some like really neat ideas that I really enjoy watching. Like it really, at the end of the day, I just think it's like a cool movie.
Yeah, it's really fun. There's some great sequences in here and some really standout, memorable scenes. I think there's some really fun effects.
Yeah.
Great moments of like horror-ish tension. It's not really a horror movie through and through. Again, the cast is phenomenal.
Yeah, man.
Especially Rebecca Ferguson and Ewan McGregor. They're great in this.
Crazy in this, dude.
I think my only problem with it still, even on a rewatch, even with the director's cut, which I will say, the director's cut is like, I would say like slightly better, but I actually rated them the same. Like the director's
not
cut
a substantial
is just
enough
kind of like
difference.
more. I was really hoping it would fix my biggest problem, which is Danny's character arc isn't really like as fleshed out as it feels like it should be. But honestly, the director's cut didn't really fix that. It just was like longer. And that I enjoyed it being longer because it was still like well paced and I think well written, and they did some interesting stuff with like the chapter stuff. But like literally it's practically, I don't know, a comparable experience watching the theatrical and the director's cut.
Yeah, since I've only seen the director's cut, like I can't imagine less Danny than I already have. Like
No,
it's already a pretty thin.
I was about
arc.
to say he's used like I don't think anything was cut from actual like adult Danny in the movie.
Yeah. But yeah, really, like my biggest criticism of it is I don't think the finale works as well as it could on like an emotional level. Like I don't care as much as I want to at the end, but like it's still cool and like not as dumb as it easily could have been. So I have to admire it. I gave it a 4 out of 5.
I also gave it a 4 out of 5.
Very cool.
Then what did you watch, Robbie?
I watched a little film called The Hunt.
Ethan Hunt?
Not Ethan Hunt, sadly not a prequel about Ethan Hunt. It's kind of a riff on The Most Dangerous Game, but it's set like with the backdrop of like NPR obsessed people. And I don't know, it's weird. It's almost a good time, like, but I don't know, it's not even really worth like talking about. It's just kind of boring at the end of the day, which is like the worst thing a riff on and then not and then there were none. The Most Dangerous Game can be, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It had Glenn Howerton in it. I had at least his scenes were cool. I gave it a 2 out of 5. I'm not going to revisit it anytime.
Then what did you watch, Robbie? Since apparently you were going crazy on the watching stuff.
Apparently, I watched a Buster Keaton short film called The Haunted House, in which he is a bank teller for half the movie. Well, he's a bank teller for the whole movie. But like the entire first half of it takes place in a bank, and it's, you know, it's kind of slow, even for Keaton's stuff. Not that his like movies are usually slow, but you know, like compared to even the second half of this, it's like kind of boring. But the haunted house segment is really fun. You get like skeletons and giant bats and a bunch of like fun antics, and he goes to hell at the end of the short.
That's cool.
It was pretty cool.
Shout
yeah.
out to Buster Keaton.
Yeah, really fun time for at least half of it. So I will gladly watch it again if someone wants to watch it with me.
Then we watched Friday the 13th on Friday the 13th this
Whoa.
year. Crazy. There was again a special event screening that we went to. It was in a cool little historic theater.
Yeah.
Not a movie theater, but a historic theater.
I was about to say, it's the Earl and Rachel Smith Strand Theater.
Yeah, so the sound was a little rough, but, you know, it was still a really fun time. I think it's probably the best way to watch the movie is how we watched it.
Yeah.
Just, like, I don't even think saying better sound and better picture would be better, because you had a room full of just, like, really sincere Friday the 13th fans.
Right.
And that's kind of a really cool way to experience the movie for the first time. People were super into it. People were gasping. People were laughing. People were straight up screaming.
It was so funny when like people were like applauding and cheering during the finale of the movie. It was so funny.
I applauded. It's so goofy. I
love it.
Like the last 10 minutes of this film rock.
Right.
The rest of the film is super boring.
No,
nothing happens.
It's
the
not
kills,
super boring.
The kills are a little fun, but literally
they're
they're
awesome,
not that
dude.
memorable, and there's zero plot, and there's not that great atmosphere, and the performances aren't that great. And there's really not much special about this, except for, I guess, the fact that it did well enough to spark a franchise.
Is it plotless and repetitive?
And boring.
Yes, it is. It's not boring, though.
It is.
It's a bit silly, and it's a bit dumb.
It's not even dumb and silly. It's just boring. I wouldn't call what's happening in the film dumb. There's just nothing happening.
I do think the finale
Okay,
is dumb.
the finale's dumb, but that's the only time it's interesting.
But yeah, no, I think in spite of like all of its weirdness and like its very plain rip-offness of Halloween, I think it's honestly still like really interesting, and I found its atmosphere to be like, I don't know, really immersive. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe it wouldn't be this way on a second viewing. But I don't know. I had a really good time watching it. I liked the camera work a lot. I liked the knockoff Bernard Herrmann score like half of the time. I don't know. The score like teeters on either being really cool and really obnoxious. So I don't know. It's a weird movie, but one I would gladly watch again. So
I gave it a 3 out of 5.
I gave it a 4 out of 5.
Wow.
Thought it was pretty good.
Then on the 14th, I watched Hellraiser for the first time. The original Hellraiser in 1987. Very interesting movie. I was kind of cautious to go into this just given like what Hellraiser is.
The whole premise of Hellraiser.
But it wasn't too bad like content-wise or anything, so I was going to give it a chance. And it was really fun. It's a very goopy movie. And I appreciate a goopy movie.
There you go.
Everything, like, just really all of the effects are just really what is standout about this movie. Cool. I think the plot's really fun and the characters are really fun. And it's probably just like coincidence, but it reminded me of Beetlejuice in a weird way. Like
that's the vibe I get from it.
Kind of coming from it was very Beetlejuice-esque, but like darker and more serious.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just had a lot of fun with what it was doing. I think it's got some really unique stuff, great performances, and obviously extremely iconic imagery and gore. And that's really where it shines. There's so many fun little creatures. There's like this cool effect where a guy is like from like goop like reforming and like it like comes together in his like nervous system first and then like builds out slowly.
That is pretty cool.
And I'm like, dude, they did that in this 80s movie. What the heck? It looks so good. You see his little brain. It's really fun.
I need to watch that.
So yeah, it was a really cool movie. I was super into what it was doing. I thought it had great atmosphere and genuinely was like really scary and kind of unnerving at parts, which I think is cool to do.
Yeah.
I gave it a 4.5 out of 5.
Nice. And then on the 14th...
Nope, not quite yet.
No?
I watched Saw with my mom.
You did watch it on the 14th.
Oh, yeah, but you were about to say something.
I was about to say something.
On the 14th, I also watched Saw with my mom. I had just watched it for the first time a bit ago. We talked about it.
You'd already seen Saw?
I'd already seen Saw. And I wanted to convince my mom, who for apparently like ever since Saw came out, thought it was like a really gory, over-the-top slasher film, so it did not interest her. And I was trying to convince her that it was more akin to like CSI or Criminal Minds. And so I finally convinced her to watch it. And she was like, yeah, it's like Criminal Minds. And, you know, Saw is fine. I was very curious to see it on a rewatch, like how the mystery would play. And it plays out about the same. It's not like that engaging of a mystery. But it's fun. It's got really good elements, mainly the cast and like some really fun choices creatively.
Yeah.
But not my favorite thing. I give it a 3.5 out of 5.
Fair enough.
Then, Revy, what did we watch?
Then we finally sat down to watch Hereditary, which we're a couple years behind the curve.
Yeah, couple.
But yeah, we watched Hereditary finally. I bought the Blu-ray for it a couple years ago and just hadn't watched it yet.
Yeah, we'd never made it around to it, but we finally did. And it was very, very cool.
Yeah, cool movie the end of the day.
It's very much up my alley. And like I think that gave me a little generosity to it because I don't think it's a perfect movie. No. It's got some very clearly defined problems, but it's just cool.
It is cool. Like honestly, that's like like most accurate thing I can say about it. It's a cool movie. It's
a
not
cool
like
little
perfect,
movie.
but it's cool.
I'm sure I'll probably like on rewatch next time either like it more and leave it at a 5 or like it less and take it down to a 4.5. Like, because I really love in theory what it's doing and I really vibed with it a lot in the first time. But again, there are just such clear problems you can pull from the movie. Lots of stuff where it's just not taking it to the full extent of what it seems like it should, or it's getting muddled trying to do too many things at once, and it's just not that scary, and it's a little bit too long. Just little things here and there that build up.
Yeah. No, I mentioned in my review that like I really liked the use of like iconography in the movie, and like the motion, like the general just motion of it is really cool.
Yeah.
And the way they stage a lot of the scenes is really neat. But like I don't know, not nothing, but like a few things don't land quite right for me. Like especially the familial drama just doesn't really work for me that much. Like I never feel like I
really liked the drama between like Peter and the mom.
I don't know. I just never felt like I like fully understood any of the characters or like empathized with them fully. Maybe that's on me.
Yeah, I don't know. I was fully on board for Peter. I was rooting for Peter.
Yeah, no,
the
like
whole time.
Peter's the most like interesting character to me, and I don't know. I felt like it was kind of. It just didn't feel as in depth as maybe it should have been, because like I don't think it fully works on like a mystery level or as like a family drama level. Like neither of them are.
But
like
it's neither
perfect.
of those things, Robbie.
I know.
It's a horror movie.
I know, but like it just I don't know. It never fully drew me in the way I quite wanted it to, even though it is like pretty cool, especially for a debut. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I just really love specifically what it's doing. A lot of the creative choices, a lot of the effects.
Yeah.
Especially the cast. Toni Collette and Alex Wolff are like...
They're giving it their all, man.
This is probably my favorite performance I've seen from both of them.
Yeah.
And that really carries a lot of the movie for me. Cool. Again, this time I gave it a 5 out of 5.
I gave it a 4 out of 5. I really want to love it like that much more, but it is still pretty great.
Yeah, a tentative 5 out of 5 for me.
Cool.
Then on the 15th, I watched It, the 2017 It. I'm actually a pretty big fan, probably more so than most people, of the old It, like the 1990s It.
It is pretty cool.
I really love what it's doing. I think it's super sick. I think it actually makes the It story work in one film, which is pretty impressive. And so I was very interested to see what a modern It would be. And I was already pretty nervous about it because I had already seen it. You guys have heard it's been torn to pieces about certain specific issues, and praised for others. And I pretty much landed right in there for what most people have to say about it.
Micah has the most basic reading of It.
I really do. Like, the kids are really great, and the cast is fun, and they have great chemistry, and when they're doing, like, fun 80s kids stuff, that's good. That's really good. It feels like right up there with something like Stranger Things in terms of really capturing that dynamic well.
Cool.
But the horror is, like... fine to really embarrassingly bad in the movie. Especially like Pennywise himself just does not work for me. I understand that he's a little creepy. Something's a little off about him. But like, he's not a character. He has like 5 lines in the whole movie. He's not interesting. He doesn't do anything memorable. Like he literally...
He has a balloon, Mike. That's
he has like a balloon. Like, it's not even the same. He doesn't even use balloons to the same effect as they were like the 90s one. But like, he's just like every single scene, his entire thing is like he'll scare you and he'll do like a cool thing. Like the precursor to him is always cooler than him. There'll be like a cool thing. There's like a running bit with like that he like keeps changing what's airing on TV to do these like cool hodgepodge message things.
That's
that
funny.
is really fun and creepy, and I love that. But then he'll pop up and then he does like the weirdest CGI little like thing. It looks really off-putting, kind of like The Flash does. Same director, by the way.
Yeah.
And then he'll make a loud snarl and flail towards you. Like, literally, like, that's the best way I can describe it. He just like towards people, and it's so underwhelming, and so much of like most of the horror is just that. So yeah, I think like the worst thing you can do with it is not make Pennywise interesting. And I think Pennywise is super uninteresting in this. And also, for some reason, it feels like they give less time to the kids in this movie. Like, there's not nearly as many scenes as I want of them just, like, hanging out as friends. And what really, dude, this really kind of bugs me. So Mike, remember, the only black kid in the group, in this movie gets introduced. They save him from the bullies, and he does not hang out with them once.
Oh no!
Outside of a plot moving thing.
Oh no!
He just doesn't. He's not really like. I was like, what? Where's Mike? Where's Mike? He's just not there.
That's funny.
So they like it feels a little underwhelming on that side. But anyway, I for some reason I have really strong feelings towards it, which I don't know why that is.
That is funny.
But I gave it a 3 out of 5.
Fair enough. Then on the 16th, we watched The Evil Dead for the first time.
The Evil Dead, the original 1981 Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Very interesting film.
Yeah.
I would like to of course put a disclaimer up at the front that we skipped the rather infamous scene from the movie.
Yeah. For good reason, I think.
Yeah, I think anyone who watches this movie should probably.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there. And it was an interesting movie. I think having seen so much late work from Evil Dead, because I've seen, of course, the 2 new movies and all of Ash vs. Evil Dead. Mm-hmm. Like, I've only had late series Evil Dead stuff. It really is cool to see the beginning of the series, this low-budget student film that, like, it's just got so much good energy to it. Like, bad energy at parts, but I'm saying, like, good, like, filmmaking energy to it.
I said I really admired just the like sheer amount of passion that went into like everything about the movie, you know, like even though it has its like drawbacks and limitations and everything, like you can tell they cared so much about the movie in every scene.
I think it's really impressive that they make this film work for what it is, because there's essentially yet again like no plot, but things are actually happening the whole time, unlike Friday the 13th. But no,
very different movie.
It takes like this no plot thing and makes kind of a genuinely kind of surreal feeling, very off-putting, very almost like, I don't know, I genuinely find it like a very like scary kind of movie, which I think is really impressive for what it's doing. It's especially with the one scene and like how definitely flimsy this is compared to later Raimi. It's not one that I'll probably return to anytime soon. But it does make me really excited for Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness.
Yeah, I praised its like kind of goopy effects and like the cool lighting.
I about cheered when the stop motion stuff happened.
Yeah, that's so cool. Like I love the atmosphere of it. I love the like just general direction of it. Like it's really inspiring to know that like someone my age made this, you know?
Dude, he was 21 when he made this and it feels it at parts.
Yeah.
But it's really cool.
I mentioned in my review that I would really like just the whole time I was watching it. I'm like, man, I wish, because I'm so familiar with like Sam Raimi's later career. And I'm like, I could just see like just a version of it that's that much better from a more refined like artist and with a bit of a bigger budget, which again, like
which a lot of that unrefined and low budget lead to a lot of the really unique atmosphere.
Yeah, it makes it unique.
Movie,
but so. I just felt like I would enjoy like just a bit better version of it. I don't know. So yeah, I'm really excited to see Evil Dead 2 is really the biggest takeaway.
Exactly. I gave it a 4 out of 5.
I also gave it a 4 out of 5.
Then on the 16th, I watched Crimson Peak.
Hey.
That was today, actually. The day we're recording this segment anyway. And yeah, it was really good. I really love the movie, and I'm working on a video for it.
Wow.
So that's going to be my October video on my YouTube channel, M. Grayway Films, that you should go check out. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. And then we watched Scream.
We watched Scream. Scream 22, baby.
Scream 2022. Scream 5. Scream 5.
But yeah, that's what we watched. Thanks for listening all the way to the end of the episode.
And we'll be back in 2 weeks. Well, we'll be back next week.
I was about to say, hopefully we'll be back next week.
We'll be back in 2 weeks for Scream 6.
Yeah.
Be back on the Scream train, I should say.
Scream train. All aboard, baby.
All aboard. Bye.
Bye.